The Great American Beer Fest is in the books one more time for 2023, and what a great festival it was. It was nice to be back in Denver, going through the whole process. Felt like normal again. For those of you that are big GABF fans, welcome back. It is back in full swing, and you're going to recognize a lot of what you really loved. I'm really excited about it because I think right now, this is the launching point for the next evolution of what the craft beer industry is going to be. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to give you my rundown today of all the big takeaways from my adventures at GABF and all through the week, to tell you the truth. So, hey, cheers to you guys. I appreciate you. I'm drinking an IPA from a friend of ours that we're going to talk about here coming up in a little bit. Now, we're going to go through some of the winners, some of the big takeaways, the information that you want. I'm going to go through my favorite beers of this particular competition, and then take a look at what the competition is and what the industry is doing and where it's going. It's been a tough year. Let's be honest. We're going to have follow-ups later on some of the contributors here. We're going to hear from Brewdog. We're going to hear from Russian River in the coming weeks. We're going to hear from a number of folks at the festival that I think really give you the girth of what this industry is right now. But bottom line is, let's start at the top. Cheers to you. Welcome back to RGR Craft. If you would like and sub and hit the bell. This is the GABF special, my wrap up on the event. You're going to see little pieces, smaller additions, smaller videos here on the channel in the coming weeks to really go over it all, from beers to the festival itself, logistics, paired, the whole 9 yards. You're going to see it all. But this is the rundown. Welcome to the podcast. If you sub here, you're going to get a lot of information. This show is going to be about the GABF and the beer industry, but we're covering wine, whiskey, as well as food. This craft channel is expanding, and we're welcoming a ton of new fans. Welcome to the channel. I'm Ryan. If you don't know me, I'm a home brewer. I have worked in the professional brewing area for a time. Not my main deal right now. For me, I'm about the consumer. I'm about the craft of building flavor, no matter where it comes from and what style it's delivered in, whether it's beer or something else. But today, I'm really excited because it'd been a little bit, honestly, tweaked going back to GABF since COVID. Today, this weekend, this felt like it was back to normal. And that's honestly what I've been looking for. So I got in early. I got around. I saw a ton of people, a lot of familiar faces, a lot of brewers that we know and some that we don't. Met some new folks too. So it was really, really eventful. And I have to tell you, that feeling, that felt good on the floor this year. I'm even going to give you a little bit of behind the scenes of the bagpipers. If you haven't been to the Great American Beer Fest before, the sessions start with the bagpipes. And it's kind of great. I got a chance to meet them and work behind the scenes a little bit, see how they tune up and do their thing and that kind of deal. So I'll have some piece coming for you on that as well. But that feeling is what kind of gets you going, right? And let you hit the floor. A lot of folks start out this festival with where they want to go. And in the last year or two, it's been very difficult because things were changed. And it was an alphabetical layout. Well, this year was back to regionals. And I think that that's the best way. That's the old way. And it works so that when you're looking for something, you know really where to look. And you can cover a regionality. If you're looking for hazy IPAs and you want to be in the Northwest, you can have them all together. And I think the decision to go back to that this year by the Brew Association, I think that was the right decision. And I think it worked out. A lot of people loved the fact that it was back in that order. Allows you to hit some of the big booths on the end caps, as well as moving around to the merch, and the headphone-oriented panels that you can go to, but still be able to move within a region and an industry and know what you're getting there. So a lot of folks that I talked to were very much pleased with it as well. It's not just me. It's a ton across the board. A lot of parallels that I think really lay into where this fest is going. There was seltzer for the first time. There was cider for the first time. At least booze in there. Competition-wise, we'll get to that later. But just having that presence is expanding what's going on at GABF. And if you're a brewer, or a home brewer in this case, I get a lot of both here on this channel. You know, it really does tell you where the drinker, the consumer is going, and that's dragging the whole industry. We're going to talk about some of the differences that we saw in the competition this year later in the show, But that also is big evidence of what is driving the market in this particular region of artisanship. And that's something that you have to deal with, because at the end of the day, this whole concept is blending artistry with business, and you have to pay attention to the business side. Too many folks, a lot of folks have had to close their doors in the last couple of years because the business side wasn't quite robust enough. RIP, a lot of very craft oriented, very artisan oriented breweries that didn't make it because the infrastructure wasn't there for them. So we'll talk about closures this last year and what it tells us going forward here in another show. But for now, I want to stay on the positive and stay on where and what we saw. So I want to start and give you guys my shot and my view of best booth of the year. And it comes down to the guys at Melvin. It was a lot of fun. Got to talk to them for a bit. They had a DJ on board. You can see that here in this image as well. They teamed with Roadhouse, obviously the same region, to put this together. A couple of vehicles on the floor, a nice booth with a ton of beer being poured, and a really good atmosphere. It's super unique. Obviously, you can see the placards up there on the bus. It's just very one of a kind. And if you didn't get there this year, make sure that you make a beeline for Melvin next year. One of the best production breweries in America. You want to hear and see what they're saying, taste what they're pouring. That is without a doubt. I really enjoyed that one. They poured some great beers. I'm a big fan of the Thor series from Melvin. So if you haven't had that, make sure you get out and check that out as well. It should be distributed across the country, and hopefully that you can get a good look at that. That's something you don't want to miss. I feel like the Kvike takeoff in this country has been really, really dramatic. And I think we have to really recognize that of where that particular offshoot of the brewing side of the industry is going. And that is production that yields both flavor and economics that allow you to deliver more product to more people in a more efficient way. That's what everybody's looking for. And I can't blame them a bit. So want to give a runner up as well. The Kvike thing, we're going to have to do a whole show on that as we come back here later in the future. But runner up for us was the folks out at Strange. Tim and friends over there did a great job, and you get the feel of the umbrella stack as well as a healthy pour. Let me put it that way. The image is a little bit sideways because that's the way that you do when you're running around this floor. So if you haven't been to Strange before at the festival, make sure that you do. Multiple medal winner, pours an incredible barley wine. If you go to the brewery, make a beeline when you're in Denver to make sure you get to Strange. I know Tim and the crew down there will very much appreciate it. So check them out. Those are my two favorite booths. And I do like to see, because when folks put effort into their booth, it makes the experience better for the folks at the festival. It also tells you just how involved they are, how dedicated they are to making this an experience and spreading not just their beer, but their art and their craft. Shout out to Figueroa. They did a great job with their booth, as well as the folks who produced both of my favorite beers that were not quite as robust a booth, but they brought the flavor in what they were pouring. And that comes down very specifically for me to two beers that I wish I had had a chance to have more of. And stop me if you've heard this before, because you may have. Beer of the festival for me was Woodsy. This particular evolution of it was very, very unique. Now, if you haven't had Woodsy, it's from Dogfish Head. And if you know the history of Dogfish Head, you know that they bring out a lot of the classic styles, revive ancient recipes, do a lot of the research and digging that goes backward, not just forward. It's not just hazies and cold IPAs going forward. There's a lot of culture and history to go back and get to, and they bring that. We're going to have a feature here coming up on the channel from what we heard from Dogfish Head and Boston Beer on a separate event, but was related to GABF. So watch out for that. I'm gonna run you down some very, very special beers that were poured there. But this one on the floor was Woodsy, and that is their 120-minute IPA, which most folks shy away from because of just how massive it is. And yes, there's a good American bitterness in it, but I don't find it anywhere near overpowering, especially when they do something special with it, which is what they were pouring at GBF this year. It was aged this year. It did hit 16%. I should recognize that. So we are pushing the boundaries of what IPA certainly can be, and honestly, what barley wine can be. 16% is a hefty beer. You have to make sure you get there early in the session if you want to get some. Make sure you check it out next year. This year's were actually aged in Oloroso sherry casks. And that's really what I think changed the flavor profile. Taking heavy IPA with that, with plenty of bitterness, and aging it in wood particularly does the job. It smooths everything out. It gives you some of those oak notes, gives you a lot of the flavor that right now barrel aging is still heavily sought after. And you can get that from a lot of wood products. But what you get from Oloroso sherry is what some of the biggest and most popular scotches are aged in, whether it's the Balvenie, the Macallan. There are a number that it's just a whole genre within scotch that is aged particularly in sherry barrels, Oloroso in particular, because of the woodsy caramel flavors that it imparts on everything that it touches. Soaking in those barrels is what gives you that next level up. Takes you from a good beer to an incredible beer in varying time stages as well. Now, this one, as I understand, was aged anywhere from 6 months to I think a year and a half, and then blended is what I was told at the booth. I have to get that on authority, and maybe we'll circle back to that one. But what you got here was really the epitome of what is experimentation at the IPA level, with so much of the industry slanting towards cold IPA and hazy IPA, those that are easier to produce, don't require aging, generally are quick turnaround, especially with the advent of Kvike yeast. They can still produce a clean beer, even a hazy beer, depending on how you do it, but at a record time. It all feeds into the process. Now, they go old school on it at Dogfish Head so that you get all the flavor development, and that goes into the barrel, and then the barrel is then aged and blended. And that's what gives you the finished product that is super smooth, yet has the hop characteristics of a bigger English style IPA, in my opinion, with a good dose of American bitterness, but not over the top like you would sometimes think 120-minute IPA would do. And that's certainly worth sharing. And if you've seen the shorts here on the channel, I've given you my instant reaction to it. You can go back and check those as well as my second beer of the weekend. And that was particularly from Vinny Chilurzo and Russian River. You guys will see a piece with Vinny here coming up as well. And you've seen the short on this beer, but it's a really unique take on a Pilsner with added flavor dimensions. Light lager, and we're going to talk about the category coming up, but light lager in general is growing and growing and growing. This is a Pilsner that was co-fermented with Sauvignon Blanc grape juice and a little bit of must, from what I understand, talking to Vinny, and put together, fermented with Nelson Sauvin hops. Now, you might recognize that those words sound kind of similar. Sauvignon Blanc is actually what Nelson Sauvin is recognizing. It's coming from the same base word, in that the hop blends with the flavor of the grape, and putting those together in what is I think, a really well done Pilsner to begin with. Certainly not lacking in body or anything else. It came in at 8.5%, and is something that I think you do want to see as often as you possibly can, because it gives you the floor that you're going to get that crispness, that almost bohemian kind of flavor out of a Pilsner of that size, but then lightening it and putting those aromatic and really fairy dust type flavor profiles on top of it from the grape must, from that crispness, that lemongrass that comes from both the hop and the grape. It was an incredible pairing. I would drink that daily, year round, no matter what. One more kudo to Vinny in making sure that he did that. His booth, along with Dogfish Heads, were both, I would say, standard. It wasn't the over the top kind of let's do something just to stand out outside of the brews that we made. That's really, I think, what stands here is that they brought 2 booths from Russian River this year, one for Windsor, one for Santa Rosa. And both of them had great beers, but I will tell you what they brought in the Intinction is what it is called, the Sauvignon Blanc Intinction Pilsner at 8.55%. What they brought there was so unique and special that it really should have had its own booth. You also got some of their standards, like STS Pills and Velvet Glow. They did have a double dry hop edition of Pliny the Elder at 8% as well. And that was a nice, well-rounded booth that didn't have the grandiose structure around it, didn't have the flashing lights and the cabin built in the woods kind of booth feel to it. You'll see some of those others here on this channel as well. But kudos to Melvin and kudos to Russian River because they really brought it and had the best beers of the festival for me, especially in those categories that I am not particularly moved by. You know me, I'm looking for something a little bit more challenging on the palate. I end up going towards what is barley wine quite a lot. There were a couple of great entries there from Brewjog. Three Rise Men from Rubens in Seattle was very good again. We're going to go over some of the winners here in a little bit as we look at some of the categories, but a couple of shout outs to begin with from the breweries that I think really, really stood out. It's been an uphill rocketry for Wibby Brewing, and congrats to them, Brewery of the Year at their barrel size. Like to see Colorado breweries do well, especially when I know folks there. So shout out to everybody at Wibby and the ownership there. Great, great, great beers that are consistently put out year after year after year. There's a ton of German influence across the country. Here in Denver, particularly with Wibby and Prost, you get a lot of it. And I think folks around the country come to Denver for the German beer thanks to these two breweries. So shout out to Wibby Brewing up there in Boulder, Longmont / I don't know their exact address off the top of my head. But also want to give a nice recognition to Westbound and Down. Another series of wins. Westbound and Down up in Idaho Springs generally puts out great IPA to begin with. Their collaboration series was smacking again, and they came away. It's nice to see that the industry still recognizes, even if it is, traditional quote unquote styles, that brewers who make good beer get recognized. And that's really what we're trying to do here. It's certainly what I'm trying to do. So I wanted to shout them out as well. I want to look up the medal winners here because I don't want to shy away from that. And we're going to get to a bunch of them as we come down through the whole process here. I'm going to share with you some of the categories as well. But those two breweries, congrats to you. I think it went very, very swimmingly for a lot of Colorado. Let's see, Lone Tree got in there for the first time. The Westbound and Down that did win the gold was their Westbound Select. It was for the West Coast India Pale Ale style. Very specific that we're going to get to that. That's my favorite style is the West, and they've done something different with it. We're going to talk about that here coming up. But shout out to those guys. I want to switch over for those that hit those particular categories. The competition was definitely different this year. When you take a look at it, I'm going to show you the official from the Brewers Association here by getting this back on screen. This is the 5 most entered categories at the fest this year. And it starts with none other than the Juicy or Hazy India IPA at 365 entries. Category 65 is one that has been growing and growing of late. And I think we all understand that that's where the industry is going. And that's what they want to see. I'm double checking real quick because I want to track for you guys the difference. It is slightly down from the year before. In 2022, there were 375 entries. Not much of a change, but still what is expected to maybe be the crest of the hazy, at least in terms of competition in America. We may have seen that. There's no way to tell for sure until we see next year. but that slight pullback from 375 entries to 365 is certainly significant. And so I want to keep an eye on that, because while you're trying to appeal to the drinking public across the board, you want to make sure that you're able to deliver on the categories that you're trying to emulate. That comes in a couple of twisted ways here, that if you monitor what happens with that particular style, you'll see where the gaps are for other styles that are increasingly growing. And that's what I want to get to next. Because if you're on the video side of this, like, sub, hit that bell here on YouTube. If you're listening to the audio side on either Spotify or out there on Apple Podcasts, please come over and consider viewing as well, because I like to give you guys visuals as much as I can. And the podcast has evolved through the years. You're going to see Mike again eventually, and some other guests, but this has come back to a video-based podcast that then we repurpose and send back out on the audio side, because the visual of beer is important. And so I want to include that as much as I possibly can. That's where I'm going right now. So we're going to come back to what was category 65 in 2022. In 2022, category 66, was the Imperial IPA. It had 156 entries. Some names that Ghost Town, North Park, some competitors in there that you recognize. Hazy was actually last year category 67. Now it's 65, because 66 has become the actual definition of West Coast IPA. That is really, really great for me, particularly because that is the style that I am looking for everywhere I go. And so you went from the Imperial IPA in 2022 that had 156 entries in the category. You had more in the just American style IPA, which is the lighter side. It was 423 entries. And between that and the hazies, you had a lot of competition, and that's where the focus was. It was all over the place, to tell you the truth, because that's what was going. Well, American style IPA fell off quite dramatically. It went from that 400 down to this year at 2023 at GABF, only 206 categories in the standard American IPA category. And so that shows you the shift, and it's shifting out to the margins, either getting lighter and fruitier with the hazies and juicies, or getting more significant with the West Coast return to the original style of American IPA. And that's where they had to come in and actually change things up. So in 2023, they changed category 66 from Imperial to very narrowly defined West Coast IPA. Means it's bitter, it means it's clear, it means that it comes out with a white to cream colored head. Those are some of the major ones. You get some of the old inclusions here. Obviously, Westbound and Down won the category this year, going back to its roots. A lot of great entries, and I drank a number of them because that's what I wanted to see, is how big did it get? You can see here that it was 300 entries at GABF this year, doubling the size of what the category it was used as a precursor for it did last year. That means it is in a large swing back onto the mainstream. And so if you've seen me wear my Make IPA Clear Again shirt, that's exactly where it seems like the world is starting to go again. So I just want to throw that out as we come down to the number 3 category at GABF this year. Third most entered at 284 entries was category 36. That's the light lager. That is what's sweeping everything right now. It was previously American style lager, and the light lager was 35. So these are just tracking the category changes, so you guys know what we're looking for. They kind of changed those a little bit, added, so it went to 36. So what you see is at 284, that is significantly different than what we got at light lager. Almost double at 143 in 2022 for light lager. So you're getting the edges. You're getting the diversity here. You're getting more on the West Coast, the bitter side of IPA, and you're getting the opposite all the way down to the light lager end of the beer spectrum, both increasing at this year's GABF, showing you where the market's going, where the brew industry is going, and what you can expect going forward from both of them. it ties in to a couple of others here, and we can certainly see this. As we said, we'll talk about 5 here again in a second, because number 4 ended up, I think, a surprise for a lot of people, because with the shift to light lager, they expected maybe a fall off. Maybe the German style classic Pilsner was not going to be represented as much. Well, it's alive and it's well, and it's right at the same point. 233 entries in 22, 228 in this year's. Now, that is a category that across the country is coming back more and more. A lot of people are brewing it. Kudos to Lazarus and Prost, as well as Tenma, for doing the classics the way and as well as they can, because Prost Pilsner is one of my go-tos in that category. Got the silver again this year. It's a style that I think coincides with American light lager. American light lager is even lighter, and so you can still get a little bit more flavor base out of this particular style without having to go to the Bohemian, which is the next style up. That's style 46, which also had nearly 200 entries at 186. So that's significant as well. Now, my beer of the festival, Vinny's Sauvignon Blanc Pilsner, was very much a special release. It was not entered in either of these categories, and that's why it didn't show up there. And number 5, we touched on it a second ago, but is the American style India Pale Ale. And that's the one that I think has slipped a bit and surprised some people. Not me necessarily, because as the entries vary, I think you're seeing riffs on it. American IPA in 2022 was 423 categories, fell by over 50% down to 206 because of being able to place your beers in these alternate categories. But shout out to some of the old school fatheads. Breakside, one of the best IPAs that you can get anywhere across the country. Shout out to the Oregon Brewers, who had a great year in the medal count here at GABF as well. Some collaborations. Shout out to Third Eye. They had the most take-homes from this particular competition. And a couple of friends were involved with the new Belgium collab. So still remember, collaborations really produce some great results, and I hope you guys check those out. Those are the big takeaways from the medals themselves and what it's showing us the industry is doing. I'm really excited about that, because I think sometimes it's, over the last few years, it's gotten a little bit homogenous. It's gotten too narrow in what was popular and what was entered because of what the market was doing. Hazies are still there. They're going to stay. But you're also seeing some other things come back. So we're getting that variety in terms of appealing to a wider base. We all know that the homebrew structure has had a lot of challenges of late. I've lost 2 of my favorite local homebrew stores here in a state where homebrew is still right up there in past times. It hasn't seen the pullback like a lot of the rest of the country has. And so you still have that interest, and yet it's still not enough. So the industry being able to diversify and pull things out to more options for the drinker, I think, is really the direction that it needs to go. And I'm glad to see that it is right now, because a couple of things that were concerning is that we've had so many closures. Not just the initial shout out to Butcher Knife, who had to close down during COVID very early, just because of the way that it was structured and not being able to move enough product. Those were kind of expected, right? Because it was such a shock. It's the last 6 months of closures that have really caught a lot of the industry off guard. Obviously, the Anchor Brewing fiasco, conundrum, whatever we want to call that. I'm going to do a piece on that coming up as well. So make sure you like and sub and become a member here of the channel, because we're going to have a lot of information on that. But I want to shout out a couple of past winners that weren't at GABF, which gives you an idea as well. Fremont, our friends over at Launchpad, and Tank, 3 breweries that I look forward to every single time that weren't able to participate this year. You got to be on the lookout for good beer, and you got to support good beer where you can find it. And I think that's the last takeaway for this GABF wrap-up, is that if you're enjoying this, if you've watched this video to this point, you are a serious beer drinker. Continue to support those that you feel deserve that. Go out there and find them. I do like seeing a few things here just to wrap it up, because if we support innovation. We support new brewers. We support brewers that do the things correctly. We have this kind of trend that I like to see. From 300 medals total, you got 263 medal winning breweries. So it was diverse. It was 325 first time winners. I'm sorry, first time entrants. That's a lot. So while it may be the shrinking of the business side, the creative side is growing because there's a lot more entries. And I think that's a good thing. It shows you that there's still some health here in this industry, and we'll continue to move forward in an artistic way as well. And then kudos to the 16 first-time GABF winners. I know a lot of brewers personally that is the highlight of their career. So kudos to all of you that are first-time winners. I hope that you enjoyed yourself. I certainly did, and thank you for everything that you've done for the industry and for me as a partaker of your art. So that's going to wrap it for me today. We're going to be back. I have news, I have opinion, and I have some takes from a couple of great breweries that did some special events that I was able to attend in Dogfish Head, Boston Beer. You're going to see some interviews with some of the leaders right now in where beer is going. In Vinny Treluzzo from Russian River, over at Brew Dog doing some cool things coming to America. A lot of great content coming, and I would love to get your opinions on what you would like to see in addition. We'll do some of my other, not top two beers, but continued beers that I was able to get you some instant reaction for. You'll see those in the shorts. And I'll continue to do my beers of the week, just like this one, which is double dry hopped Pliny from Russian River. I hope you guys have a great night. Cheers to you. Thanks for watching this one.